Welcome.
family.
Got that echo. Welcome to Sexual Alchemy. I am Nef.
I'm Leyanne.
So we want to welcome you to today's session. Today is all about strengthening your willpower. If you're here with us for the first time, welcome. This is a series called Sexual Alchemy. It is an introduction to this beautiful, potent, ancient medicine of sexual alchemy, which is all about how we embody our power through honoring the fact that our sexual energy is the seat of our power and how it is that we utilize it and activate it within our bodies. And Leyanne and I are hosting a sexual alchemy retreat in Cabo Verde, where we're actually going to go in on all of these elements. So today is just a taste. And in the sexual alchemy series, we've been going through all of the 7 main energy centers of the body. The sexual alchemy retreat actually goes into all 12. It's 360 degrees of this sexual or energetic circulatory system in our body. So if you haven't watched the previous sessions, please do. Yes. Again, if you are here with us live, please check in the chat. You can put your questions, comments. That's the benefits of being here with us live. We love to engage with you, especially with the practices. If you're watching the replay or the raw play, as we like to say, feel free to comment. We're going to drop our contact information if you have any questions, and you can always visit sexualalchemy.com. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to our sister.
Yeah. Welcome, family. We are so excited to be hosting this live specifically on the solar plexus. So get ready for an activation today. If we're going to deliver solar plexus energy, it is about activation. So yeah, like Sis said, this is really a dose. So if you're watching this, please stay on. Bless yourself by getting this gift of strengthening your willpower. We're going to be talking about our spiritual will. We're going to be talking about purpose and all these very important themes that the solar plexus governs. We've gone through the different chakras, but our focus today is the navel chakra, which is all about transformation.
So can you introduce yourself to anybody who's the first time?
Yes. So if this is your first time getting introduced to me and my work, my name is Leyanne Oliveira. I am a medicine woman, a yogini, a mother, a daughter, a criolla, someone who is really passionate around liberation, embodying our power, being who we have come to be on this earth, to fully embody our spirit and the medicine that our spirit has to offer for the world, specifically during this revolution that we are currently in.
Ashe. And I am Nef. I'm Aust NeferKa. I am a farmer. I am a sacred wisdom keeper and a high priestess of ancient African sacred science known as Kemetic science. Some people know that as ancient Egyptian science. So that's the heart of what I'm bringing into our presentation today. I'm also a healing artist, a multidimensional healing artist. I'm a revolutionary. And as our sister said, we are here in this moment for this potent transformation and healing process on the planet. And sexual alchemy, to me, is the core of that, because our sexual energy is constantly being siphoned, manipulated, stimulated, and a lot of the presentation today, some of the Kemetic science that we share is really going to give you an insight of our ancestral perspective on exactly what's happening right now and how we prophesized that we would be here, and the guidance that we gave for ourselves to return back to in order to transform during this cycle of great change. So sexual alchemy, I'm going to go ahead and share the slides that we have. So as we said, today is all about strengthening your willpower, because that is what this Aritu, or this chakra that we're covering today, is all about. It's the core energy. So before we get started, as always, we want to make sure that we're present, we're grounded, not only grounded, but also rooted where we are in this moment. So honoring the land that's beneath our feet and all the spirits of that land beneath our feet, honoring our bodies, and taking this moment to be fully present. Okay, so what better way for us to ground ourselves today than doing fire breaths? Okay, so if you've never done fire breaths before, then I'll probably go ahead and let me actually remove this for a moment, because I think it would be great to do a little bit of a demonstration. So again, when we do the practices, please actually follow along. If you're not in the space where you can do it in this moment and you're watching, come back to it, watch it, and actually do the practice. The things that we are sharing, because the Sexual Alchemy Retreat allows us to actually connect with you in person and there's movement. That's a huge part of sexual alchemy. It's the actual movement and embodiment, right? So doing the practices, at the very least, the ones that we can share virtually, is part of practicing sexual alchemy and actually knowing the tools that you can activate in your day-to-day life to stimulate this life force energy. Okay, so the solar plexus is our core. So it's interesting because with the fire breaths, we're actually activating this center with our breath, so our breathing. And I like how Leyanne likes to describe it. The main thing you could think about to help you know how you're moving yourself or your breath with the fire breaths is almost like a dog when it's panting, like right? So it's that quick, speedy breath and it's activating, right? Because fire energy is about stimulation, and we're going to get really deep into that, right? But essentially what you're going to do with the fire breaths is recognize, we're not going to go too long, because if it's your first time doing fire breaths, sometimes it can cause people to feel lightheaded. So that is something that tends to happen. So I want you to just be present with yourself and recognize that. Take yourself to where you can go, right? And then you'll be able to expand yourself. So essentially, you're going to be pumping quickly. So it's going to be
and
okay.
the breath is being done through the nose, so it's panting but through the nose, so your mouth is closed and you're doing it, you're forcefully exhaling just with your nostrils. So it's and then what's important to notice is your stomach, you're also activating your core, so you're also contracting and pulling in the navel. So it would look so you're pulling in on every exhale. And the beauty about this breath, it's an aptogenetic breath. So if you're someone that's anxious, it's going to give you exactly what the body needs. So if you have excess of energy, it's going to help you release the excess of energy. And if you need energy, it's going to give you energy. So it's a beautiful breath no matter where you are. And it's preferably done on an empty stomach from all the pumping.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. Remember, the breath is quick and you're pumping out using the force to come out of your nostril. So, and as our sis demonstrated, it's going in through the core. So we're going to do a few of those together. Do you want to count them, sis, or should we just go?
We can just maybe do a minute. I can keep track of time.
Okay. So we're going to go for a minute. So wherever you are, just take a moment. If your feet are planted on the ground, just center yourself, almost like you have a thread that's tied, a bow at the sit bones, and it's coming all the way up, all 33 vertebrae of your backbone, your jed, all the way up your crown and pulling you up to heaven, to Mama Nut. Okay. So your posture is important here. You could drop back your shoulders. If you feel tension here, just relax those shoulders. You can roll them back and just prepare yourself. We're going to synchronize so that we're all on the same breath. So on your next exhale, I want you to go ahead and hold on empty. So empty, and we're going to begin.
And breath play can sometimes feel like you're working out, so just keep it going. It's something you have to use your will for. And you're pumping a lot of energy through your body, so just keep it going. Maybe 10 more seconds.
can go ahead and seal your fire breaths here. Allow yourself to just come back into your natural breathing. Right. The purpose of the fire breaths is really for us to stimulate and activate. As our sister said, we're balancing, because it's double-sided, right? If you have excess energy, or if you feel like you're lacking energy, this stimulates and balances your energy, right? And it's a very charged practice, right? It's different from some of the other breath play that we do because it's more intense, and that's the point. Right? So that intensity is very healing, and we're going to be talking about exactly why that is today. So thank you for sharing your breath with us. To give an overview of where we are, so that we're remembering that this is a circulatory system. This is a process that we're moving through, right? We began our session talking about launched Sexual Alchemy by talking about why it was even important for us to be dealing with sexual energy, the current state of where we are collectively in our sexual energy. I mentioned how a lot of our sexual power is being not utilized by us, but really being leaked and manipulated and used. So this practice has been all about us being aware of how our energy and our life force moves and circulates. And we started with the crown, and we moved down into the first eye. We went into the throat. We did the heart. And now we're in the solar plexus, in the core. And it's important to remember that everything we were talking about was about this electromagnetic field in the body, right? It's beyond the physical body. It radiates beyond, right? And it's also expressed on a spectrum. So we talked about exactly why the colors are viewed in that way, right? There are 7 energy centers, because that's one of the symbolic spiritual interpretations of how divinity manifests on the planet. So part of that is not only through the physical body, but it's also through the 7 directions. We went over that. We talked about why there are 7 different colors, which are representing 7 main frequencies or tones. So it's sound, right? Vibration. And that vibration is also expressed through color with the color spectrum. So that is pretty much where we've already moved through. We're going to continue to move through the body. And I think it's important to recognize that sometimes people start from the bottom up, like from the root energy center up, and we started from the top down. And I want you to know there's no wrong way, because this is a circulatory system. So recognize that the energy is meant to circulate through the body. When something is circulating, at one point it's going up, and at another point it's going down. So it's important that you know how to not only move the energy up, you also know how to move the energy down. So we had talked about Sekhem in one of our first sessions. So if you remember, when we talked about Sekhem being our power and our life force. And we introduced the principle of Sekhmet, she who is powerful. And we talked about her being a fire element and a fire principle. So I'm bringing her back up today because we are going into the solar plexus, which is primarily interpreted through the lens of fire. And this is the realm of Sekhmet, right? We talked about Sekhmet being the healer that purges through fire, right? She comes with the purification, with the ferocity, right? She's fierce. She's the lioness. The lioness is the one who hunts. We talked about how the Sekhem scepter is used by the rulers and the authorities of the land, because it represented having and holding that power and that will. So that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Mm-hmm. And to talk about the overview, so the solar plexus. So for those that might just be watching or that's been rocking with us, last week we did the heart center. And we talked about the heart center being the connector between the top chakras, which is all the higher self, the spirit self, and then the bottom chakras being more about your physical self, the personality of this lifetime. So today we've descended down into right below the heart, our solar plexus. So for those that want to find the solar plexus, oh, this is my crystal, y'all. I got my crystal in here with me. The solar plexus is right in between the ribs. So that soft part, that is right below the heart, in between the ribs, is where your solar plexus is physically in the body. It's connected to, oh my God, so many important themes that I'm so excited for us to get into. And the first one being power, right? We've been talking about embodying your power, and this is your power center. Like Nef said, it's connected to the fire element. So this is your, in Sanskrit, it's called the Agni fire. It's the fire that helps you digest. So not only digest food, but also digest emotions, digest life. So we want this fire to be active and on. The solar plexus is also connected to purpose, right? So your drive, why are you here? What are you here to do? And then also your personal wisdom. So if your fire is on, oftentimes you have so much to share with the world. You have lessons and wisdom from your life that you've digested and now have to share with the world. This chakra is also, it's right above the navel, but it's in certain yogas, including Kundalini yoga, it's known as the navel chakra, which is all in the navel. We do a lot of navel work because the navel is the transformer. We need this heat. We need this power. We need this purpose. We need this personal wisdom to be able to actually live out the life that we want. If you're someone that has an open, balanced, moving clockwise solar plexus chakra, then you're often seen as confident. You're someone that believes in yourself. You're self-aware. You have self-respect. Versus someone that has an unbalanced solar plexus chakra, this is someone that often feels helpless. So if you're someone that is dealing with, oh my God, the state of the world is overwhelming, I feel like there is nothing I can do, I feel so helpless, then it's showing an imbalance in the solar plexus. Other ways is, of course, lack of confidence. So if you're someone that is unsure of yourself, feeling like you're wanting someone out externally to save you, or you're waiting for something externally outside of yourself to give you anything, especially your sense of self, it's coming directly from a weakened or a closed solar plexus. And then one that is really important is if you're someone that is unconscious about their personal power. So if you feel like, again, this externalization of your power, if you feel like your power is out there, you're waiting for mom or dad or sister or friend or a colleague or a boss to give you, like, they're the ones that can do something for you. They're the ones that can bring you forward. If you have that externalized, often how I've seen it in my clients when I'm aligning their chakra is, instead of the energy, the vortex, right? These energies are vortexes of energy. Instead of the energy of the solar plexus moving inward, bringing energy inward, it's usually outward. So it's focused more on what others perceive of you versus what you perceive of yourself, which then leads to, your self-confidence. So let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit about power and what I mean about power, right? Because we've talked about power in all the different centers. So essentially obviously all the chakras hold power. Now, the power that we're talking specifically today when it comes to the solar plexus is your spiritual willpower. So it's the power to, because if you've been rocking with us, you know that I've mentioned that the position of the chakra is important. You always want to be aware of what chakra is above it and what chakra is below it. So as we've descended down, the chakra that is right below the solar plexus, which we'll go into on Sunday, it's our sacral, which is our creativity center. So the spiritual willpower I'm talking about is the power to create, the power to the spiritual power that you have, that is your divine right to create the life that you desire, right? The life that the heart desires. So if you're someone that feels like, I can't alchemize, like I can't manifest, I'm not able to create the life that I want, then we want to bring your attention to the solar plexus. And an easy way to do that is the solar plexus is governed by the color yellow. So it's often seen as this yellow color. If someone is like someone is has a clear mind's eye and the ability to see, if they focus on your aura, the solar plexus is usually seen as a yellow color. So if you're someone that is wanting, you're like, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit helpless. Yes, I want to ignite my willpower. An easy thing to do is to wear the color yellow, to bring more yellow into your life. Some people actually feel like repulsed or feels like, oh, it's too bright. And if you're someone that listening that might feel that way, that is the exact reason why you need to bring more yellow into your closet, into your life, into your office, because the yellow itself ignites the fire. It starts bringing that digestion, that heat that is necessary for transformation.
Yeah, and the frequency, right? Remember, we talked about all of the colors are correlating with a certain frequency, meaning we only perceive the color to be what it is because the frequency in which it's vibrating, right? So you can bring that, you could bring the tones that speak to yellow, right? It's not just about the tones, it's the sound tones and it's the color tones, right? So I think that's a really beautiful and important way to engage with the empowering your solar plexus and stimulating your solar plexus and any of the other energy centers, right? You can bring the colors into your life, and that helps you to be present with it and navigate it in a very subconscious way. And sometimes those subtle realms are really the most powerful because it's doing it beyond your consciousness, right? But the will that we're speaking on today is actually about what you're conscious of, right? Because it's all about the will. It's how you activate the energy. And I'm excited about a lot of the things that we're going to share today, especially when it comes to the science of it from a mythological, ancestral perspective. And it made me think about Marcus Garvey. The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey has a quote where he says, "Up, you mighty race, you will accomplish what you will." And I think that quote is so powerful because to say you can accomplish what you will. When we talk about will, like our willpower is the part of us that pushes forward. It pushes through, right? So we're going to go into exactly like some of the ways that we can look at this from a rooted ancestral perspective. What you see on your screen right now is the symbol of one of the symbols of Ra. Okay, so Ra we've talked about before in some contexts, subtly, but we never focus specifically on Ra. We have to focus on Ra today because, as our sister said, this is the principle of fire. This is the sun. This is the solar plexus. Ra is the sun. It is the creative force, right? So ancestrally, we depicted Ra with the symbol of the falcon, much like we symbolize Het-Heru, which we've shared about before. And we'll go into that again at the end because we're going to talk again about siSTARS and how we introduced this Kemetic expression, this ancient African expression of what many of us know today as yoga, because that's one of the practices that is going to be activated in the Sexual Alchemy Retreat is through this movement medicine and the specific postures that are very ancestral. And it's important for us to be able to root that. So we're going to go back into that because that had the symbol of the higher and the lower self coming together, or the higher and the lower realms coming together, right? The physical and the spiritual coming together and being whole. So you have both the higher self represented by the falcon, and you have Ra, the creative principle, and the sun literally depicted as the solar plexus. Now think about that parallel there, because the higher self, when I introduced the Trinity, right, the Holy Family, we had the higher self as Het-Heru, who is the son of Aust and Asar. So that word son is meant to be a double entendre here, right? Because we're talking about the sun itself, and we're talking about the son, the child that is birthed from these two principles of life and regeneration. Okay, so these are very upful, right? High frequency energies. When you think about the falcon, it's literally a bird, right? So it has the solar disk overhead. So obviously there's an expression of it that's directly connecting to the physical form of the sun, which, as we know, we interpret it as fire, right? It creates that warmth. And that's chemically what we connect to when it comes to the sun. We know that chemically we need the sun, right? We need vitamin D. And then there's different expressions of vitamin D, right? Vitamin D3, when you go get your supplements and things, knowing that we are, those of us who are not exposed to sunlight and have a lack of sunlight literally do not have the chemical components that are necessary for the body to sustain itself. Now, depending on where we're from, coming back to siSTARS, when we talk about the higher and the lower realm, right? We were also talking about that in the introduction when we talked about African and European culture, and we talked about there being two cradles of civilization, the expression of culture that comes from an ecology or an environment that is solar powered, and one that is not, one that came through the ice and through the cold. So when we're talking about Ra, we're talking about the tropical, we're talking about the solar energy. So when we think of ourselves as African people as being melanated or carbonated, right? Being carbon compounded beings, the sun and carbon absorbs energy, right? So the melanin, what we call the melanin, right? Or the pigment that we have literally is an adaptation to the sun, because it allows us to protect ourselves from the ultraviolet and the damaging rays of the sun that other people who don't have that, even when you think about albinism, right? People who have that condition, they cannot produce that pigment. So the sun is very dangerous for them because they're not able to filter it naturally. Okay. So I think that that's something important for us to recognize. Like, we're not just talking about the sun as a physical entity. The sun this is a solar powered planet. Okay. Nothing exists in this realm, in this physical world, without Ra. Okay. And we are revolving around Ra, and all of God's planets, all of the creative forces and spheres of energy in our solar system are revolving around Ra. So that's how I want you to think about this energy. The solar plexus, your life, your expression of life is revolving around your will and your relationship to your will, because you are here as a creator. That's what Ra is.
Yes.
So the falcon in particular, I just want to briefly say that the falcon is used for a very particular purpose. Obviously, some people may be familiar with the image similar to this that's on the dollar bill, right? When you see the eagle used. Obviously, in Africa, that was not the bird that was used, because that's not the bird that we saw, right? So the bird that was used in African tradition is the falcon. And the falcon is at the top of the food chain, much like over in the West, the eagle is, right? So not only is it used because of its ability to be a high flying bird, it's the highest flying bird, right? Meaning it's the closest to the sun, right? So we saw it in that way. And its hunting techniques were something that were really seen as unique and valued, because it expressed precision in hunting, right? So its eye, right? Remember we talked before about the eyes of Heru, right? The eyes of the sun. That's what that represents. So it's important to know, not only is it that the sun itself is part of it, because this bird can actually look directly into the sun, which is very significant. It's also the fastest bird, right? So it's something about its speed, its precision, its ability as a hunter that we use to symbolize this. So it's something predatory about it. I think that it's important to recognize that, right? The will is your ability to go out and get it, right? Like you creating your reality. So we've seen this symbolism to be really important. And when we think about the physical sun, I'm just going to speak on this relationship of like what happens and how we can look at Kemetic science in a way that's very grounded and recognize that it's symbolic. These are not literal things. This is a scientific expression that we as creative beings, right, that are nature-based, we look to nature and we painted these pictures and we told these stories of what we were observing to speak to a scientific process, right? Through the observation of nature, we were able to figure out exactly how these different elements and principles and forces of nature work together. So Nut and Geb is what you see on your screen here. And Nut is the star-spangled body of the woman that's arced over the body of the man, Geb, that's laying at the bottom, and it's held up by another figure known as Shu, the one with the feather on its head. So that's the atmosphere. So the atmosphere is a paradox. You can see it as being a combining force, right? Uniting the two. You can also see it as a distinguishing force, separating the two, right? And Nut is usually depicted swallowing Ra, right? So swallowing Ra at night And then Ra moves through the night and she gives birth to him again in the day. So I wanted to just share that because I think it's a beautiful way to recognize, like, this was storytelling. So we're saying, okay, at night, the sun is swallowed. We know because the sun goes to set in the west, right? And then we go through night and every day the sun is born. So we depicted that expression to speak to something energetic and symbolic that happens. Every single day the sun rises, it gives us inspiration, right? It gives us hope for liberation through any strife or difficulty or darkness that we move through. We're waiting on that sun to rise, right? We know we can expect it, whether it's cloudy out or whatever the situation may be. You know that energy is there and it's present. So there's an element of that swallowing that I think is really important. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go into some deeper layers of us looking at what is this relationship to Ra and why is it a predatory energy? Like, why is our will seen in that way? Like, why is something strong about it? Why is it fire? Why is it that power that has to be expressed? I don't know if you wanted to touch on anything on that, sis, before I continue to go in a little deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to add the component of purpose, because it's really hard to think about, like, when you're thinking about willpower, right? When we're thinking about willpower, right? This ability that we have to act, to create, to go towards something. It can feel really daunting to have such a power with no purpose, right? It's like, okay, yes, I wake up every day, and like if you're someone walking around with no identification of your purpose or a connection to your purpose, you wake up every day and it becomes this 9 to 5 thing where you're using your will, right, to get in your car, to go to your job, but it's like daunting. It's almost like the responsibility of it doesn't excite you. It doesn't create that fire, that passion that the solar plexus, that spiritual will is naturally supposed to have. And I believe that naturally it comes through purpose, right? It's through understanding that if you are a human being on earth, right? If you have breath in your lungs, if you have the ability to take in life and your body is being emanated in the creator is allowing that, has gifted you that, it's for a reason. Everything is for a reason, right? Like everything that's created has a function. Like if, a spoon was created, so the function of picking up food and eating it. It's the same thing with you. You have a function. You have a purpose in why God has put breath in your lungs. And when you can connect with that, when you can even inquire within yourself, like, okay, if I am on earth right now, knowing who I am, know the story of what I've gone through, what I have grown through, like, why am I breathing? Why, what purpose does my life have? And when you can have some clarity on that, if it's, okay, my purpose is to bring more love to the earth, or my purpose is, every time I'm around people, I bring joy, or my purpose is, I get really fired up around justice and bringing justice to the world. Once you have some identification of purpose, then yielding that willpower to create, to move forward is easier. And it's a responsibility that you're willing to carry and use, because there is a purpose behind it. So your solar plexus is really, like I mentioned, a really important theme is connecting to your purpose, getting clarity on why you exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's important to think about what gives us purpose, right? We're going to be going into that, because it's like think about what would happen if we just had life and there was no death. Right? Because we've been talking a lot about Ma'at. I just wanted to highlight what Brother Wale shared about the peregrine falcon as one of the fastest birds in the world, and it can dive at speeds of over 200 miles per hour. So I think that's really interesting. So speaking of purpose, like, we need balance. We've been talking about Ma'at every session. We started with Ma'at as being the universal consciousness, right? At the top, but above even the crown of our body, the energy center that connects us to the universal principle that connects all things, because Ma'at is wholeness. And in order to have purpose, there has to be wholeness, right? There has to be these components that come together, these complementary forces that come together. And that's what we're speaking of when we're talking about the life force and the creative force of what sex is. The purpose of sex is the combination of the two polarities in this sexual dance that creates a magnetism, essentially. But it's the magnetism of the two coming together that essentially creates power. Just like when you plug something into an outlet, right? You need the positive and the negative charge. So it's about the complementary energy. So death is the complementary energy of life. If we only had life and we never died, there would be no way to even value life, right? It would become mundane. Just like if we didn't have nighttime, if Newt didn't swallow Geb at night, if Newt didn't swallow Ra at night, and we didn't experience the darkness and what the perception of not having the sun represents, because we always have the sun ultimately. And the sun, even when we don't see the sun, depending on where we are on the planet, we're always in position. We just don't see it. Like we had talked about, like the night or the darkness, the womb, the cosmos, we're always in space. Even when we feel like we're in daytime, it's just a matter of the light that we get to see, the perception, right? The visible light. So when we talked about the judgment scene, this is important because what happens when the spirit dies, right? It's interesting because that's something that people, have been curious about from the beginning of time, right? Like what happens when we die? To this day, what happens when we die? We say, oh, we don't know, right? It's interesting because our Kemetic ancestors valued life so much that we studied death in depth, right? Some cultures interpret the fascination with death that the Kemites have, that our ancestors had, as being like an obsession with death. But you can only be obsessed with death if you're obsessed with life, right? So this recognition that death was essential and significant, and connecting with that energy was reflected in the ways that our ancestors lived. So we were seeing the judgment scene of Ma'at was showing that at the end of your life, you are judged, right? That's what this representation is. So the heart of the person who has transitioned, right? Whose body has died and now their spirit is in transition, the first place that they enter is the judgment hall of Asar. So remember, we already talked about Asar. We talked about Asar in association with the cosmos, right? When we talked about the belt of Asar, which they consider Orion's belt. We talked about the winter solstice being the birthing of the sun, right? All of that is significant to continue to take into consideration because it's symbolic. Myth applies across the board. It's on a micro and a macrocosmic level. So when we think about the soul's transition, once it enters into the judgment hall of Asar, this is the process where the heart is weighed with the feather of truth, right? The ostrich feather. If the heart is found wanting, right? Meaning the heart is heavier than the feather, then that creature that you see there, the Amamit, the one that has the crocodile head, it has the hippopotamus and the leopard body, right? This anthropomorph, like this. It's interesting because this is also depicted in the Bible as well. In some of the like depictions of like Revelation, I remember there's like these creatures that are described as being half crocodile, half lion, right? So this comes from this depiction of the Amamit. The Amamit is a creature that devours the heart of the person whose heart is heavy and found wanting. So what does that mean? That means that that person will face annihilation. Annihilation means non-existence. In Ma'at, Ma'at is some people are familiar with karma. And I talked about this before in relation to Ma'at. Karma is an aspect of Ma'at that means you will reap what you sow. So it's not that you will be annihilated innately. You will recycle into whatever it is that you gave so that you can receive it again. And you learn through that process. That's the soul's initiation process. So when the heart is weighed, if the person goes through the judgment hall and they're not annihilated, their spirit enters into the duat, where they will then go through a process. in the West. So they're leaving the realm of light, right? They're leaving the realm of consciousness, the realm of existence, and going into the realm of the unconscious, the realm of darkness, right? So that's what the soul's journey goes through, just like Ra. We're speaking to the concept of Ra still. Remember the sun. The sun, once it's swallowed into the night, it goes through 12 hours. If we're talking about an equinox point, we have 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. So ancestrally, we depicted this as the 12 hours of the night, or the 12 doorways, or the 12 gateways of the Duat, the underworld. The Duat is also been called the afterlife. The Duat is the West. It's where the sun goes to rest, when the sun has to move through the darkness. We depicted this as a journey that was a battle with all of the creatures that exist in that realm of darkness. And that's ancestrally what we depicted as where we are actually right now, in this degenerate cycle where humanity is in a dark age. So that's what we're moving through right now. So you see on your screen, the creature underneath, you see the serpent creature. We're going to go into that and talk about what are the creatures that exist in the night, and what does Ra have to go through to assert his will and come back victorious in the day and be born, right, at sunrise. So the boat of Ra is very important, because this solar bark, right, this bolt of Ra is where the consciousness has to move through the darkness and go through a series of different gateways, a series of events through every hour of the night, including the darkest hour of the night, which many call the dark night of the soul. I've also heard someone call it the dark night of the ego, which I think is actually more relevant, because when you go through that, the soul is always whole, right? But when we experience duality, it's more our ego is actually going into that dark night and experiencing an alchemical transmutation process, right? So that's what the solar bark is. We're all in transition every night when we go to sleep, right? We're going into the realm of the duat. We're going into the darkness. So when our soul completes its life cycle, it goes back into the darkness, and it's on the boat of Ra where the soul transitions. And not everyone makes it through that process. That's why I'm saying there's a series of initiations. So when we're speaking about the willpower, we're talking about someone who is victorious. That means someone has lived to a degree a righteous life where it has been judged so. And now they get to transition into a new experience. So you always see the priest or the person wearing the mask of a falcon on the solar bark. This is representing an aspect of your own consciousness. It's a faculty of yourself. This is what your willpower is representing. It's a faculty of yourself that wants to be the hero, right? The hero in your journey. So when it moves through, so there's several sacred texts, right? In ancient Kemetic literature, you can find, there's three main texts that I want to mention. So if you want to go deeper into this and study this for yourself, also you could always contact us for more information about how you can learn about more about this through Tehuti Ma'at. But if you're interested in going deeper into this, the Pertemru, which is the book of coming forth from night into day, it's misnamed the Book of the Dead, but it's actually the book of coming forth from night into day, which is literally that, right? The sun is coming from night into day. So that's one book. The other book is the Pyramid Text, which is one of the oldest funerary texts. And then also the Book of Gates, or the Book of the Duats, right? So these are texts that specifically cover like what this journey is through the night and how the solar bark moves forward. Now, the main creature that you see in the Duat, the greatest enemy of Ra, is Apep, or Apep, right? The Greeks interpret that, and it was Romanized as Apophis, which is why I put on the screen that it's interesting that that is the root of the word apoptosis, which is the process when the cell dies, right? Apoptosis is the process of programmed cellular death. And I think it's important for you to recognize that, because that connection and the way that even in modern day science, APEP is seen in a scientific context. And in Kemetic science, it is also a functional process, scientifically speaking. APEP filters out all that is evil. APEP is unnecessary evil, right? It's just the most grotesque, dark things that we could think of. Apep was seen as the great serpent, the great creature of the dark. So when we had spoken in the beginning and we talked about Wajet and we talked about the Kundalini and that connection, we talked about the serpent energy. I mentioned that it's not all serpent energy that was depicted as evil. This is one of them. And it's actually depicted in this way because Apep is not necessarily a serpent in the way that you may think. It's not a cobra, right? It's not a rattlesnake. This is a parasite. Apep exists. It's a parasitic entity. Okay, so parasites feed on the host, right? They need you in order to exist. So Apep, when we move through the darkness, right? We move through unconsciousness, right? Where our will is just being siphoned, like our sister was talking about, right? You might just wake up and you're on autopilot, you drive to work, you do your 9 to 5, you come back or whatever, wherever you work, whatever hours they are, right? Whatever you're doing unconsciously, your will is still there, but it's being fed upon. It's leaking. You're unconscious of it, and the parasite is feeding off of it. Just like with our sexual energy, one of the things with sexual alchemy, why it's so important what we're sharing, and the fact that you're here receiving it, you're conscious now. You're aware of these energies. You're aware of your body. That in itself does so much to illuminate that darkness, because Apep exists in the Duat. The Duat is also the realm of ignorance, right? The light, the sun, is the realm of consciousness. So whenever we shine light, we are exercising those demons, right? We're illuminating the darkness. So it's very important to recognize that while we need the darkness, right? But the light is birthed within that darkness, right? So it's just like the soil, right? You need the darkness of the soil. The seed must germinate and then it sprouts and comes into the light, right? But part of it is still always in the dark, right? The roots of the plants are always in the soil, in the darkness. So recognize that, like, this is a good way to think about it consciously. Like we talked about the chemistry of the body, right? We talked about you need to get your vitamin D3 supplements. You fatigued. Maybe you have vitamin D deficiency. You need the sun. The sun is very, very, very important, especially for people of African descent. Ancestrally, we have in our genetic code a requirement for the sun that we need. So it's very important to get yourself sun exposure. Yes, you can take vitamins, but you need the physical sun. And the warmth of that sun also nurtures your own culture so that you can express yourself from a space of warmth instead of from a space of cold. Just think about it on a practical level. Like, what happens when you feel cold? Do you feel like working? Do you feel like doing things when you're cold? Not necessarily, but when you feel warm, right? But it depends on your biology. There are other people on this planet who love the cold and they get activated and stimulated in the cold. So we're speaking in general terms. Right?
So can you read that list? I thought it was powerful with the parasites.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to read it?
Sure. I think some of these are normalized in our day-to-day when it's something we are struggling with at a physiological level is parasites and needing to eliminate them. So some common symptoms of parasites in humans are constipation, gas or bloating, diarrhea, pains and aches in the back, joints or muscles, irritable bowel syndrome, which is also regulated. A lot of people experience IBS and just deal with it at a symptomatic level versus getting to the root of it, which could be solar plexus issues, allergies, an increased appetite, itchy ears, nose, or anus, nervousness or grumpiness, chronic fatigue, or lethargic or apathy, various skin problems, tooth grinding or clenching of the jaw, interesting, anemia, excess weight, forgetfulness, vision problems, and problems sleeping.
Yeah, and that's a great way to depict it because think about it. If you have a problem sleeping, then your chemistry is off, right? You're not receiving that melatonin. What does that mean? When Ra rose in the sunrise, or when Ra went to rest at sunset, you didn't get that exposure that you needed for your body to chemically recognize it's time to start shifting the chemistry so that your body can be ready to go into sleep. So that is our circadian rhythm, right? Our circadian rhythm, all of us have that. And if it's out of balance, that means our sleep patterns are off. Sister also said the clenching of the jaws and the teeth grinding. We had talked about that. And I mentioned, pay attention to when people have that, because that can also be specifically around sexual trauma, right? Sexual trauma, especially with the children. Like, pay attention when that teeth grinding, those things are happening, they mean something. We made that connection to the pelvic floor and the jaw, right? So specifically, whatever is happening down here is having an impact up here. So these are all ways. The realm of the duat is the underworld. This is the realm of all the entities, thought forms, demons, whatever you want to call them. They are dense. The realm of darkness is the realm of density. The realm of light is the realm of lightness. Like, literally, I'm talking about weight, the light weight, not just the light color. So when the weight is light or the frequency is high, it's less density. We talked about the lower energy centers that we haven't gotten into, but we're going to go into in the next 2 sessions that we do for the webinar. The lower frequencies are more dense, so we feel them more in the physical world. They have more physical expressions. They materialize. So remember, density can attach itself to you. That's what we call being possessed, right? So if you have parasites, you are possessed. Everything that happens in spirit takes form in flesh. So you also want to care for your body, right? That's a bottom-up approach, right? You take care of your body so that your spirit can lighten. You can also do a top-down approach where you're dealing with the spiritual things you need to do so that they can impact your body. Our approach is both and, right? So you want to make sure that you're doing parasite cleanses. You want to also make sure that you're going to rest or getting exposure to the sun when it's rising or when it's setting, so that your body can naturally adjust its chemistry. You want to make sure you're getting sunlight, of course, physically, and you want to make sure you're doing the spiritual things that you can do to make sure you don't have these attachments, that you're facing your trauma, that you're doing your shadow work. All of those things are also impacting your energy, right? From the top down. So to go deeper into this, because we're going to also do another practice to close out our session today. And I wanted to make sure that we talk about the energy of Set again. So Set sometimes is also known as Set-hyphen or Setesh or Seth. Interestingly, it was shifted within Christianity to be Satan, right? So all of that comes from this root word, this root energy of Set. So Set is also an energy of density. Remember, I talked about this before when we talked about the Trinity and the family of 5. We talked about Set and Nebutet. They are a couple, right? So those complementary energies are the energies of death and decay. And remember, these are necessary forces. We're not here to just villainize them or demonize them as scapegoats. However, they are dense. And they do bring discord. These are the forces and principles of discord that are necessary. Apep or Apep, where you could see here, Set is the one that's holding that spear. Set is the one wearing the mask. We went over this when we went over Smaitawi, so I will share that again. Let me actually see. I think it's on the next slide. Let me just show it real quick. Remember when we talked about Smaitawi, the union of the 2 regions, the higher and the lower land, they're tying the knot. The image on the right, on the image on the left where they both have on the masks, the figure on the right has the mask of Set. And that was seen as a creature that now is considered to be extinct, right? So we don't know exactly what it is. There's many interpretations of what it is, but essentially the creature doesn't exist anymore. And it's used, and that's significant as well, because it's speaking to where we position Set. Right? And how Set is seen as, it's literally that, like, you just got destroyed to extinction, right? It's the principle of death and destruction. It's also the principle of the ego and gravity. And remember, we need both of those things. If we didn't have gravity, we'd just be floating out in space. We need the heaviness. The gravity gives us purpose. This is the point of why we're sharing this. Remember, Set is here protecting Ra. That's what Set's purpose is on the solar bark. He's the protector of Ra. So you see Ra behind him with the solar disk overhead with the mask of the falcon. He's being protected by Apep. That means our ego in its proper place, because remember, Smaitawi comes after Heru defeats his uncle. He had to take his proper place. He didn't destroy his ego, right? He didn't kill Set. He subdued him and took his proper position. So when your higher self, when you put respect on your higher self and your ego knows its proper place, you can then engage with your ego in a healthy way where you're in wholeness, right? You don't try to escape your reality, right? That's when you have too much levity. Heru represents levity. Set represents gravity. Too much levity is unhealthy. You need both. So when we're talking about the role of Set on the solar bark and in the duat, Set is literally spearing Apep. So there's an aspect of evil that's necessary that destroys the unnecessary evils of this world. So sometimes you may have to lie to get by, right? And I don't mean that in the sense that's a righteous position to take. But remember, Ma'at is about synthesis. You have to synthesize in a particular moment what's appropriate. But if you take an approach where it's like it's dichotomous, right, or separated, you're looking at it from a European perspective, which is what the form of ethics that we've been indoctrinated into, to think that this is always right and this is always wrong, virtue and vice. If you operate from that place, then if you feel like it's always wrong, then you start to villainize your ego. You start to villainize certain things that you have to have the adaptability to know when it's appropriate. You have to have the adaptability to have access to certain things that may be lower frequency. But you only do that once you have faced that shadow part of yourself, right? You can embrace the darkness of yourself and it not be in shadow. And that's a whole nother story. But the purpose of me sharing this is because there's a necessary aspect of our ego. The ego and Set brings boundaries, brings limits. We need boundaries and limits sometimes. Right? So it's just recognizing the groundedness of our reality. This spiritual escapism that people are teaching through the new age is not healthy. It's not in Ma'at. So it's important to recognize that this is an important principle and it's part of Smaitawi. And when we do the movement practices and we do the yoga and the postures, it's specifically about connecting the spirit with the body and being whole. And this is what is essential for us to activate our will, right? So remember, we talked about Ra has to come through the sun. The sun has to come through the night. It has to fight that battle, right? Get through Apep, right? Defeat those demons and come every day and do it again and do it again and do it again. That's what the will represents. The will has stamina. The will fights, right? So the will has an aspect of Set in it. Right? An aspect of gravity where it's like, your will is what you want. Your will is your desire, you know, and sometimes that's not healthy. So that's why we talked about Ma'at. It's important to balance that. It's important to recognize what's informing my will? What's informing my desire? Am I being programmed? Have I been indoctrinated to think, oh, I need a house and children and kids and this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm on autopilot. That is when you are possessed, right? You're possessed by someone else's idea of what success and what passion and purpose looks like for you, instead of exploring that for yourself, going through your own battle, your own journey of darkness to recognize, this is my passion. This is what I'm willing to fight for. This is what I want for my life. That fire is what we're talking about stimulating within you through strengthening your willpower in connection to this energy center. It's about knowing how to fight for yourself, protect yourself, right? Protect your passion, protect your purpose from the ideas, the entities, the things that want to inform that so that they can feed off of your energy like parasites. It could be It could be loved ones. It could be anything, right? We already know we're in a system that's constructed to stifle you, to direct your energy and your will where it wants you. So we're all in a fight for our will, you know, to be able to activate and, like our sister said, create the life that we want. So it's important to have discernment, right? We talked about that principle with the jackal, right? Good judgment. Let things sit, be patient, let it digest. Now discern, is this right? Is this wrong? Synthesize, ma'at, right? Judge the situation for yourself. Very important. That requires you to be present, requires your higher self to be the one that's guiding you. And knowing the proper place of your lower self, knowing when you need your ego.
Yeah, this is making me think about like righteous anger, which is something that is also connected. When we talked about the heart, we talked about anger and rage being one of the emotions that are not bad, but it does cause the heart to be blocked. Now, in the solar plexus, when it's healthy, when it's moving, when it's that internal fire, it's righteous anger, right? Because what anger is energetically isn't, you have observed an injustice. So anger comes and arises in the body when there's an injustice with you, an injustice in society, injustice with people that you love. So then you get angry. Now, what happens when we're not using that anger, when we're misdirecting that anger, that's when it blocks the heart. But anger is a beautiful emotion because it requires and it asks for action, for us to do something. Although in society today, we are in so much fear. There are so many blockages of the heart, which then affects our solar plexus, that fire, that internal fire that we have. And we're not taking actions. We're not using our willpower to actually create the world that we want. So as the wheel is churning in this revolution and we're going towards the golden age, right? That Ra, that sun, that light conquering the planet, it requires us to be very clear on what exactly Nef is saying about the not the polarity of good or bad, but having the spiritual maturity to know and have precision on when something is good or bad, right? Because when we talk about the way that, if we're talking about African people, the way that we have liberated ourselves, at least if it's just physical, right? Because we know there's still many ways that we are still enslaved mentally, right? In our lack of like knowing our history and our identity. But when we're thinking about our ancestors that fought, right, that used their willpower for their liberation, they were using that fire, they were igniting, and it was, if you labeled it as good or bad, it's like some of their action was against like the moral codes, right, of even ma'at, right? We will not kill. But there is a time and place for when the light must prevail, when there is bad in quotation, the things that we think are morally moral actions that we should not be taking as human beings. But there is a time of that darkness having to stand up to that other version of evil that Sis is talking about, that parasitic one that continues, that is cyclical, that continues to harm us for centuries in an ancestral way.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you said that, because I literally felt like a fire in me as you said that. It's important to recognize. Oh, well, first I want to clarify for people about ma'at. Ma'at is a moral inventory, but the difference between ethics that we get from Eurocentricity and sometimes we blur it with ma'at is the morality that ma'at represents is a moral inventory you do on yourself. So you go into Seruj Ma'at for yourself, right? You restore Ma'at for yourself. So that means when you say, or when you're being accountable and integral and you're creating justice, there's a lot of things to take into consideration, right? So our ancestors did kill. And this is also an expression of spiritual liberation, because we were programmed and indoctrinated through the Western religions, right? Amenta or Duat is what the Western religion has convinced us to split and look at this evil and this good, the good versus evil, right? But it doesn't bring them together in any way. It's always separating. And religion does that. It separates people. We recognize that. We see that and experience it all the time, but it's like we have this desire to believe something. And that's how it parasitically feeds off of our power and our divinity, most importantly, because it externalizes it. It tells us that divinity is something outside of us, which is why I come back to the principles in the Kemetic science. They are not gods and goddesses. They are not deities. They are forces of nature. They are principles that we embody. We can embody them the same way we can embody the lower frequencies, right? We didn't even have a word for demons because we recognize that everything is everything. And somehow, if that's the space that you're in, you've attracted it into your life. That is what Ma'at is. Ma'at is you get what you give. And don't doubt that Ma'at exists. You might just have to zoom out of a particular cycle to see, oh, what did I do to deserve this? It might have been something in your past life, right? So I wanted to speak to that because it is important to recognize there was a lot of bloodshed for us to get here. For us to be here right now and not have shackles and chains. And like sis said, yes, we're still spiritually enslaved. We just talked about that. We still got other layers of fighting to do. But we physically fought to get here, to this moment. A lot of sacrifices were made. A lot of blood was shed.
This free moment, right? Because that's in the moment when our ancestors were morally working through this of like, do I use the magic of herbs to poison this guy that is killing my family, right? That's not allowing me procreate. That is using me. That is physically abusing me.
Children.
They through that action, right? Through that evil action, right? Into another evil is the reason why we are here free in this way, in this righteous moment that we get to have this breath, this privilege of being able to create. That's why the solar plexus is so important, because that spiritual will is a privilege. It's a privilege that you have to be able to connect with yourself, to connect with your ability to create, and then use that power righteously, not only for yourself, but as a living ancestor for those that will come after you. To feel ignited and have our passion, right? This righteous anger towards action, it's a gift. And it's a continuation of things that's been done way before we got here. And it's something to be looked at, like sis saying, like what I said in the beginning about being unbalanced when the power is external. Your solar plexus is your power center, but it has to be coming from you. You have to understand that you are the creator of your life. A sense of responsibility is important. Your solar plexus is connected to the self, and it's the self taking responsibility and stepping out of victimhood. Your solar plexus will not be on. It will not be activated unless you take full responsibility as yourself, right? It's the chakra right before the heart that connects you to your spiritual nature and your spiritual power and higher consciousness. For you to even get to the open heart, to ascend higher into your higher consciousness, you have to take responsibility. You have to say, I am responsible for my life. You have to internalize the power that your creator has given you instead of externalizing it to anything, waiting for something outside of yourself to save you.
Yes. And that's what the set as a force, as a principle represents. It's also associated with Saturn, right? Set is about discipline. It's about that like the peace. And remember, because Set is also the self, right? It's the part that separates us from everything else, right? That's why we see it as the ego. The ego sees itself. We need that consciousness in order to observe ourselves, right? We need that consciousness but we need to know the limitations of it, because it literally represents limitation. Right? But when you have discipline, it's because you're giving yourself limits. So when it comes to your will, if you want to transform your life, if you want to be healthy, you have to have the discipline to stop eating that stuff. You have to have the discipline to go to bed on time, right? So it comes back to that that's what we're talking about when we're speaking about the will and speaking about Set. And our sister is going to, well, let me go ahead. I wanted to shout out some of these comments that are here. Many parasites we harbor, about 90 relatively common species, of which a small portion cause some of the most important diseases in the world. Exactly. I also shout out to Brother Wale. He said the opposite of right is not wrong. The opposite of right is left. Thank you. Shout out to Sophia, who's enjoying everything that we're sharing here. Appreciate your messages here. There's a few, but just shouting you out. Create your own path. Daphinex, thank you. So I want to shout out everybody who's here with us live. We always appreciate your energy infused into the team. So as I said, our sister is going to guide us in a little bit of Smaitawi practice. And I already shared with you one element of part of what she's sharing with us today, which has to do with Set, right? Saturn and the Set energy. The other aspect is our Ptah energy. Ptah in the Roman interpretation is Jupiter. So Ptah represents a sphere of energy that's expansive. Think about the planet of Ptah or the planet of Jupiter, right? It's the largest planet in our solar system. And it's gassy, right? It's like when you think about the chemistry of Jupiter, that's the expansiveness of what Ptah represents. Ptah or Jupiter is also what governs Sagittarius, for those who are familiar with the astrology, right? So that's Neith. So that energy is very expansive when you think about the personality of it and how it expresses itself, right? But Ptah is this symbol that you see on your screen. Ptah is usually shown holding a jed, which you might see as something familiar because here on what's the two aspects that are being pulled together in a knot, right? That centerpiece is the jed, right? The spinal column or the backbone of a saw. We talked about that in the previous episode. And you could see at the bottom, you're actually looking at the pelvic bone, right? So it's speaking to the same thing we're talking about right now, the union of the two regions through the body, through the backbone, right? Through this pillar of where we want the sexual energy to circulate and where sexual alchemy teaches you how to stimulate those energies. So when we're looking at Ptah, he's always seen with a scepter that has a jed. It has a wasp scepter, which represents dominion over your lower self, right? Why it's in the shape like Set. It's kind of like arced like this. I wish I could zoom in, but hopefully you can actually see it there. And then it also has an Ankh in there. Okay, so that's Ptah. Ptah is the principle of creation from the sense of like the mound of creation. Ptah is considered to be androgynous. Ptah doesn't have neither masculine or feminine, or I should say it has both masculine and feminine, but it's the aspect of just what comes from that amalgamated state, right? Where everything is one. It's a creative principle. Ptah is the patron of craftsmen, which you might find familiar because Ptah being so expansive, because Ptah is about creating. Ptah created everything. Ptah was seen as the one who created man or the physical world on his potter's wheel. This is where they get that depiction or that expression from that's used in the Bible, right? Where it said that that man is made on the wheel of the creator, the potter's wheel. So that depiction of having that analogy of the creator as a potter comes from the story of Ptah. So Ptah is the mound of creation. This is a principle of nature. It's a principle of craftsmanship, right? Of quality. And you may know it because it's used very often as a statue that's given to some of the greatest craftsmen considered in the West, right? The Oscar award that's given to people is designed after Ptah and the symbolism of Ptah. So that is the energy of Jupiter. It's Ptah. I wanted to introduce that because our sister is going to be guiding us in our practice today. And I'm going to allow the screen to be like this so you can actually see the demonstration and follow along with us for this practice.
Okay, y'all, are we ready to use our will? We have to be able to use our will past what the ego or what the limitations of the body. The work that we're doing in sexual alchemy is to move energy. So we're going to be doing a short practice to move our energy. And remembering, I'm giving us a mark of doing this for a minute. And the reason why we're going to do it a minute is 30 seconds in, 20 seconds in, the practice might feel a little heavy, or you might get to the blockage of what we're trying to move. And my invitation is that you push through the blockage by just breathing, which I'll show. We'll be doing the fire breaths that we did in the beginning to ground. And then we'll also be doing movement. So in yoga, there's these knots that we have that is essentially a meeting of many different nerves and energy nadis points, and these knots are said to not allow a flow of energy or for the kundalini to rise. And there are 3 knots, and one of them is specifically over the solar plexus, and it's near the heart, and it's called the Vishnu knot, and Granti, which translates to knot. And what we're going to be doing is we'll be moving the spine from left to right. And essentially, we're going to be creating movement in the spine, specifically at this knot, to move it. So if there's some blockage on the energy highway, not allowing your energy to flow, if there is lack of energy, we're going to be creating some energy through this short movement. So beginning by bringing your hands together and bringing some heat through your hands, and then bringing the thumbs nestled right on the heart, so just to tune in. And you can close the eyes just to bring your attention inward, giving gratitude for this moment, giving gratitude for the willpower that we have, our ability to yield, our ability to move forward, to catapult yourself and quantum leap into wherever places that your spirit is desiring, the willpower that allows you to move and go beyond the ego to create your life. Taking a couple breaths here. Making a sound, if that's available, to just release. And tune in with gratitude, allowing the information that you received to land in the body. And then you can slowly open your eyes and join us back on the screen, where we're going to bring our palms. We're going to tuck in our elbows and bring our palms up. And what we're going to do is release the Jupiter finger, so our index finger, and also release the middle finger, which is our Saturn finger. Jupiter for expansion. Woo! We're having a party in Nef's screen. So our index finger is Jupiter. It's the finger of expansion. So what we're doing is a mudra, which is a seal. It helps energy flow in different ways. So we're keeping the Jupiter finger up for expansion, and then we're going to bring the Saturn finger over Jupiter. So the middle finger over the Jupiter, which essentially is in Saturn is the planet, is the energy, which is was it Ptah, sis?
Set is Saturn. So Set Saturn. Jupiter is Ptah.
Okay, so we're putting Set over Ptah, and essentially Set is the planet of, or the principle of discipline. So we want to expand, but with discipline. And when we have expansion with discipline, that is the use of our willpower, and then there is sustainability. Expansion without discipline doesn't allow sustainability. So from this seal of energy, and we're also having the thumb, which is the ego, bring down our other energy centers. And what we're going to be doing from here is inhaling to the left and turning to the left, and then exhaling to the right. Inhale, exhale, right. And we'll do that for about a minute. And you're really forcing your breath in, good inhales, using that willpower, and you're moving your spine. left to right. Noticing where there might be tightness. And still moving through, using that willpower. Continuing, a little halfway there. Inhaling to the right, inhaling to the left, exhaling to the right, inhaling through the feminine, exhaling through the masculine. Going past the ego. When the body's saying you can't move, yes, you can. When it's telling you to stop. Bringing in fire. Exhaling anything that is stuck. Thirty more seconds. Moving. Any stale, stuck energy that is not meant to be in the body, any stuckness in the granti, in the knot by the heart. In the last 10 seconds, speeding it up a bit, really using your willpower and seeing yourself eliminating any stagnant, any stuck energy, any parasite. Third eye gaze, coming down to a still point in the middle with a third eye gaze. And you want to take in another deep inhale. Now a slow inhale through the nose. Third eye gaze and pulling in the pelvic muscle, squeezing in as you're holding your muscle, bringing in the navel inward, holding the breath, bringing that energy up. Holding, squeezing in as much as you can, sending that energy up, using that energy that you just cultivated, and release with a powerful exhale. Oh. And then keeping the eyes closed, meditating here for a moment. Index finger and thumb together, doing the Gyan mudra, which is the wisdom mudra. Index finger and thumb together. Meditate here for a moment. Be still. Be still enough that you can feel the energy that you've cultivated, the movement of energy in your body, from moving the spine, from powerful inhales and powerful exhales, powerful taking in of the cosmic air, the cosmic breath, and releasing the stagnant, dull energy that you no longer needed. And visualizing your solar plexus, where I showed you right in between the rib cage, imagining and seeing Ra there, this beautiful, potent circle of life, beaming, circulating, and sending energy to every other part of your body, sending powerful power, willpower through the rest of your body, feeding your cells with life force. Radiating, seeing the light, the beautiful yellow raw sun right in your solar plexus, beaming with power, with courage, with will. And then staying connected to that beautiful light, letting it beam, shoulders back, chest high. Feeling your power, basking in your power, basking in your warmth, in your glory, in your royalty. The solar plexus is about power, the self, knowing yourself, being confident in who you are, trusting who you are, and knowing that you have purpose. And then from that place, staying connected there, you can wiggle your fingers, your feet, and slowly open your eyes at your own pace, staying connected to that center, staying connected with your heart open, your heart wide, that solar energy on, giving thanks to the ancestors that have led us here, all the beings and souls that have done what they had to do, that trusted their will, that used their will, that allowed us, that used their will for creation enough that life continued for us to exist in this body, in this breath, in this moment. We give thanks to the ancestors. We give thanks.
Ashe. Obrigado. Thank you, sis. That was so powerful and very, very beautiful. If you're here with us live and you want to share with us how that practice was for you, we'd love to hear how it felt for you. I definitely just felt like the release of stagnant energy and activation.
Yes.
And I think that that's the perfect note for us to transition into sexual alchemy, because we're doing the best that we can to share with you this medicine virtually. And a lot of this science is sacred. Like, it's really like, as a sacred wisdom keeper, it's also a responsibility, speaking of Set, that I have to make sure that this sacred science is cherished for those who are ready for it and those who move through their own portals of initiation, through the doorways of the duat. And there's a certain doorway that you have to move through. There's a certain leap of faith that we're calling for you to come with us to Cabo Verde, right? To come and experience sexual alchemy. And we actually decided to open up this retreat to anyone of African ascent. If you are a Black person, male, female, you're welcome. We're calling you back home to Mama Africa, Papa Africa, to Cabo Verde, specifically to the island of Sao Vicente. And we're actually going to be at 2 islands. We're doing a day trip to Santanpão as well. We're going to take a boat ride. But really, we're going to really be rooted in a very intimate, private place together. It's going to be a small group of us working on this sexual alchemy work. And we're going specifically to work our way through. We're going to do the practices and teach you how to really get in tune to your body, sense and feel what's there. We're going to identify and release. The beautiful thing about being physically with us is we'll be able to do the modifications. So when our sis Leyanne is doing a practice and leading, I'll be able to be there and help and adjust and make sure that you feel fully supported and secure in what you're doing and the process you're moving through. And likewise, when I'm leading a practice, Sister Leyanne is going to make sure she's there with you to make sure that you feel fully supported and guided and you're moving properly. And really, it's going to be a beautiful experience. Like, she and I have been nurturing and like pouring so much power and love and nurturing this beautiful medicine and infusing our worlds to bring something truly unique and pure. So part of that experience is going to be the sound healing sessions, the meditation medicine, the movement practices. Our sister's going to be making sure we really get into that somatic like process of making sure we're moving things out of the body. We're going to do our sacred fire ceremony to make sure we fully release. And then the climax is going to be the Carnival. We're going to be there for the Carnival festival. So we're going to be there for two nights. We're going to the Carnival festivities. We're going to have a beautiful experience watching the Carnival parade and all of the other things that go along with this experience. So maybe, sis, you could talk about the other things that I didn't mention yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking as we're talking about the solar plexus and Ra, like we're calling African people back to Africa, to connect their feet to the soil, to just have the experience of what it means for your body. Gift your body the experience of what it means to just touch your feet on the soil again. And if we're talking about ancestors, you have ancestors that left and didn't know if they were going to return, if they were ever going to be able to step foot back on those soil. So for you to take the initiative as an African person to say, it is me. I am the one that gets to return back. I'm the one that gets to return my ancestors back to the land for healing, for liberation, for sexual alchemy. Take this call, because just putting your feet on the soil and allowing that Ra, that sun to hit, it's different. Okay, like I am currently in the United States right now, or as it's like to say, the divided states of America, and the sun does not, it don't hit the same. Okay, I don't know the like the, you know, the words or the science behind, you know, the layers of the ozone, or even where the sun is in place, you know, in comparison to like America versus, you know, the continent of North America versus Africa. But what I could tell you through my body's experience is the way that the sun be hitting there is just different. To be able to receive Ra, to get activated. I recently just went back to Cabo Verde after years in August, and my solar plexus was recharged by me being there. Not, you know, obviously I did my own healing and spiritual practices, but you are going to be in that Ra sun, and in intentional workshops, in ceremonies, in rituals, specifically using those precious elements of the earth and the sun to be able to alchemize and shift. This retreat is really for, I see it as for spiritual warriors. These are people that understand what they are here to do and are excited and ready and feel like they are willing to take the leap of faith for themselves, but also for those that they are connected to, for all of their relations. If you feel in your heart that you are ready to really step forward into your warriorship, if you're willing to step forward into alchemy for to be, you know, an exemplary living ancestor, then we ask you to come and experience this really life-changing retreat. All the things sister said, all the medicine we've been talking about, from swimming with the turtles, like there's so much medicine of just the ecology of nature that was going to just be there supporting us through the work. And then you have the magic and the medicine of me and Nef really supporting you through what we've already experienced, what we have already gone through. So as people that have experienced sexual abuse, this is why we feel so passionate about sexual alchemy, because we are living in our power. We are doing we're in our purpose. We're doing exactly what we have been called here to earth to do. And we need more warriors on the front line. We need more of us to be supported and loved and nurtured and taken care of, and to have environments like this when the medicine is coming, it's from us to us, right? It's African women sharing this medicine with African folks, right? So it's literally your sister. I am your reflection, supporting you and loving you, you know, with all of my heart, right? All of my solar plexus, all of my spiritual will, to support you in activating, in catalyzing what you've experienced for power. Because when we're talking about power, everything that you have experienced to this point that has made you who you are today, right? Even the darkest, right? When we talk about the underworld, the darkest things you have experienced, what the creator only allowed it because you can alchemize it to more power. It can be alchemized to more light, or the creator wouldn't have allowed it. So this retreat is for folks that are ready to do that work, ready to alchemize darkness into more light, to turn on and be activated and create the life that they desire, because it's available, it's here.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we talked about today, was moving through that darkness, right? Moving through that darkness on that boat of Ra, making sure that you're protected, secure, and that you're guided, right? Those are the guides. The boat of Ra has many different energies and forces that are there to support you in protecting yourself. So we are here as guides. We want to bring you back. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to make sure that you have the most transformational experience that you can have. There's going to be so much deliciousness, like literally the food. We have two beautiful beautiful African sisters that are chefing it up for us. Their culinary art is going to be feeding us throughout the entire process. So all of the food is included. It's going to be high frequency food. We're going with organic, locally sourced foods that we can get directly from the farmers, from the land of Cabo Verde. Anything else that's not from there, we're making sure is ethically sourced, highest quality organic food, because the chemistry of the food is essential as well to the process of sexual alchemy. If you want to be in mastery of your energy, you have to fuel your body properly. You have to make sure that the chemistry of your body and your hormones are balanced. So in addition to that, we're also going to have a beautiful experience where we're going to be swimming with turtles. I think that's going to be really amazing. Just getting into the ocean and taking another leap of faith in the surrender and like learning from the medicine of the turtles and what they represent as shelled beings who exist in the water, but they lay their eggs on the land. There's so much wisdom there from that. So it's going to be a beautiful experience. We invite you to go to sexualalchemy.com. The link is in the description. It's also on your screen. If you have some questions, you could book a chemistry call. We want to make sure that this is a right fit for you. But the retreat begins on February 28th until March 7th. So now is the time to apply. We're going to get you onboarded, make sure that everything gets situated and you feel fully supported and clear on exactly what it is that you need to make this happen. So we hope that if you feel that calling, that you answer the call and and visit sexualalchemy.com. And we hope to see you soon. Yeah. Okay. You who are wanting to tune in for the next 2 sessions that we have before we complete our webinar series for sexual alchemy and this dose that we've just given you, which is literally just half the slice of what the sexual alchemy course, like classes that we're doing in person are going to be, because we're going to go over so much more energy centers. So we're going over 6 more energy centers that have not been covered here. And we're going into more depth around how it's physically triggered in the body. And we're going to be doing the movement work that's necessary for you to recognize how to stimulate and use this energy. So on the 12th, on Sunday at 7 p.m., we're going to be doing the sacral energy. And then we're going to have our final root webinar on January 17th at 2 p.m. Okay, so we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you. Peace, family. See you. Peace.